Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take the sources you send us and really extract the crucial insights, the stuff that matters, basically, to get you up to speed quickly.
Make you instantly informed.
Exactly. So today, you sent over some really fascinating research. It's a study surveyed hundreds of executives globally.
All over the world, yeah.
And we're tackling a pretty fundamental question based on that. What truly makes an ideal, highly productive workplace?
Well, pick. Right. And this research really drills down into what you might call the organization of your dreams.
Okay.
It's not about, ping pong tables or free snacks, but the actual bedrock principles that make an environment thrive. And the study found 6 key imperatives for this kind of place.
6 things. Okay, let's dive right in then.
Yeah.
What are these core elements that kept popping up in the research?
All right, so first, it's about actively nurturing the individual differences within your team.
Right, individuality.
Second, you need radical honesty in how information flows.
Radical honesty.
Okay. Third, focusing on magnifying people's inherent strengths, not just fixing weaknesses.
Magnifying strengths. Interesting.
Fourth, making sure the organization stands for something genuinely meaningful, more than just profit.
Got it. Purpose.
Fifth, making the day-to-day work intrinsically rewarding, engaging in itself.
Makes sense.
And finally, number 6, no stupid rules. Getting rid of unnecessary bureaucratic stuff.
No stupid rules. Now, that's something I think pretty much everyone can get behind.
Absolutely.
It almost sounds like, well, common sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You kind of expect most companies would be aiming for this.
You would think so. And the data really shows why it matters so much. The Hay Group, for instance, they found that highly engaged employees are, get this, 50% more likely to actually exceed expectations.
Wow. 50%.
Yeah. So for you listening, figuring out how to boost engagement isn't just, a feel-good thing. It directly impacts results, team stability.
And the numbers keep coming, right? Better retention.
Yeah, definitely. Companies scoring high on engagement, they see 54% better employee retention and 89% higher customer satisfaction.
89%.
Plus, even 4-fold revenue growth compared to those with low engagement. It's pretty stark.
Those figures are just...
Yeah,
hard to argue with. And there was also research mentioned about just letting people be themselves, wasn't there? The authenticity piece.
absolutely. Our colleague Dan Cable over at London Business School, he's done some really compelling work on this.
Right.
It shows that when people feel they can bring their sort of authentic selves to work, who they really are, it leads to higher commitment, better performance, and even, interestingly, more willingness to help out their colleagues.
Okay, so you've got these huge advantages, clear benefits. Why isn't every single workplace this dream organization then? What's the holdup?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The research suggests that a lot of these principles, they actually push against some really deeply ingrained traditional ways of doing things, old habits.
Yeah.
Some can be complex, maybe expensive to really implement properly. And sometimes these ideals might even seem to conflict with each other.
Like competing priorities.
Exactly. At the end of the day, it really requires leaders to fundamentally rethink what they prioritize, where they actually focus their energy and attention. It's a big shift.
Which leads us nicely into that first imperative. Let people be themselves. Now, you mentioned this goes beyond just the usual diversity categories.
Precisely. I mean, things like gender, race, ethnicity, those are absolutely crucial, no question. But this imperative goes deeper.
Okay.
It's about truly valuing different perspectives, different ways of thinking, even the different assumptions people bring to the table based on their unique experiences.
The research had that story about the university vice chancellor, the physicist.
Ah, yes, that's a great illustration. So this vice chancellor, being a physicist, naturally assumed, the hot spots of cutting-edge research would be in the science labs.
Makes sense.
But he made a point of walking around campus late at night. And he was genuinely surprised. He found these intense pockets of research activity in really unexpected places.
Like where?
Like the ancient history department, drama, the Spanish department, places he hadn't really expected. It just shows how easy it is to get locked into assumptions about where the good stuff happens. Have you ever seen that? Unexpected brilliance popping up.
Oh, definitely.
Right.
So how do companies actually do this, foster that kind of individuality? The research gave some examples, right? Like LVMH.
LVMH, yeah, the luxury goods group. They're fascinating. You think of their star designers, right? Marc Jacobs, Phoebe Philo, obviously huge talents.
Sure. But creative geniuses?
But the key insight for you listening is how they balance that creativity. They also deliberately cultivate and really value executives who bring a super analytical, business-focused mindset.
So it's the mix.
Exactly. It's about creating a culture where these sort of opposite types can actually work together effectively. A big part is their selection process, finding creatives who also get the business side, and business minds who respect the creative process.
That balance sounds crucial. What about Arup, the engineering firm? They seem quite different.
Arup is really known for its creative, almost holistic approach. Think about the Sydney Opera House or the Beijing Water Cube. They were key players.
Wow, iconic projects.
And when they tackle something like a big bridge project, they're not just thinking about the client, they're thinking about the whole region that bridge will serve.
For a broader view.
Right. And to do that well, they deliberately brew together teams with incredibly diverse skills, not just engineers, but mathematicians, economists, artists, even political scientists.
Really? Artists and politicians on an engineering project.
Yeah. Their chairman, Philip Dilley, actually said they look for interesting parts that don't quite fit in, that take us places where we didn't expect to get to. He sees his job partly as stopping the place becoming too uniform.
I love that phrase. Interesting parts that don't quite fit in. And their appraisals sound unusual, too. No standard metrics.
Not really. Managers set clear expectations, sure, but it's largely down to the individuals to figure out how they'll meet them.
Okay.
Their HR lead put it like this: self-determination means setting your own path and being accountable. Development and progression is your own business with our support. It's about agency.
Very different. And they don't have set career paths either.
No, it's much more self-directed, driven by the individual, supported by the company.
Then there's Waitrose, the food retailer. That seems like an industry where conformity might be expected for efficiency.
Well, Waitrose is interesting because it's a cooperative. Every employee is a co-owner, a partner, sharing in the profits.
Ah, that changes things.
It builds loyalty, naturally. But beyond that, they really encourage personal interests. They might help pay for piano lessons or support employee clubs, cooking, sailing, whatever.
Really? Piano lessons.
Yeah. The idea is that letting people be themselves outside work makes them better at work. One exec said, "Friends and family would recognize me at work." That says a lot.
It does. Authenticity.
And they believe those characters who do things a bit differently are actually a competitive edge in retail. They're careful not to stamp that out with rigid systems.
It feels like it connects back to that idea about different types of solidarity. Durkheim.
Exactly. Pushing for total conformity gets you what Durkheim called mechanical solidarity. Everyone's interchangeable. But companies like LVMH, Arup, Waitrose, they seem built on organic solidarity.
Which comes from?
Using our differences productively, exploiting the fact that we aren't all the same. And like Ted Mathis from New York Life said, everyone at every level needs to feel they can truly say what I think to do their job well. It's fundamental.
Okay, so letting people be themselves, crucial. But just as vital, it seems, is the next one. Unleash the flow of information. This radical honesty idea. What does that mean in practice?
Radical honesty, yeah. It basically means communication that is completely candid, totally complete, crystal clear, and this is important, timely.
No delays, no spin.
Exactly. Giving people the unvarnished truth, the full picture. The thinking is, especially now with social media and instant news, it's nearly always better for the company to be upfront itself rather than letting information leak out uncontrolled.
Right. Control the narrative by being honest.
And it's also about respecting employees. They need the real story to do their jobs well, particularly when things are complex or changing fast.
You'd think transparency would be standard practice, but the research mentions some common reasons why it, well, isn't.
Oh, absolutely. You get managers who hoard information, thinking it's more efficient, the old need-to-know basis. Others can be sort of paternalistic, hesitant to share bad news until they've got a fix ready.
Trying to protect people, maybe?
Perhaps. And then there's just the natural urge to put a positive spin on everything, even if it means glossing over some tricky bits. Have you seen that happen? Where you feel you're not getting the whole picture?
Oh, for sure. The Novo Nordisk example in the research is, well, it's pretty stark, isn't it? What went wrong there?
It really is a cautionary tale. Back in the 90s, when Mads Ebbelson was CEO, their insulin plants in Denmark had serious issues, violating FDA regulations.
Serious.
So serious, the U.S. was actually about to ban their insulin imports, a potential disaster for them.
Wow, and the CEO didn't know.
Astonishingly, no one had told Evelyn just how bad it was. The culture apparently discouraged bringing bad news up the chain to the top executive.
That's kind of terrifying. How did they fix that? It sounds like a huge cultural problem.
They had to make massive changes. First, they completely redesigned their quality management system, looking at processes, procedures, training, everything.
Right across the board.
Globally. Not just manufacturing, but R&D, distribution, sales, support. They also clearly defined and communicated their core values and principles, what they called the Novo Nordisk way.
Okay, setting the standard.
But the crucial part was changing the culture. Evelyn brought in this process called organizational facilitation.
Organizational facilitation, what's that?
It's basically a way for the company to constantly check if its stated values are actually being lived day to day, a sort of internal audit of the culture itself, a really key takeaway for anyone assessing an organization.
How did it work in practice?
They set up a team of experienced internal auditors, people who knew the company inside out.
Why?
These auditors regularly visit Novo Nordisk sites all over the world. They do in-depth interviews with randomly chosen employees and managers.
To see if the Novo Nordisk way is real.
Exactly. They check if people feel they can be honest, especially when things go wrong. Employees are explicitly told it's their responsibility to inform stakeholders internally and externally promptly, even with bad news.
And employees like this. Being audited.
Apparently, yes. Many said they valued the visits because it created dedicated time for real, honest talks about the business and its values.
It sounds like they really walk the talk. Even that small example about banning soda.
Yeah, that was telling. When they banned soda, their internal news site, People.com, lit up. Hundreds of passionate responses, for and against.
Okay.
But the striking thing was, nearly all the comments were signed. People weren't afraid to put their name to their opinion, even if they disagreed with company policy. That shows real trust.
Of course, you can't share everything, right? Trade secrets and all that.
Absolutely. The research acknowledges that. But the general messages err on the side of transparency.
Especially now.
Especially now. Trust levels are generally lower. There's so much noise out there. Organizations really have to work hard to communicate honestly if they want to be heard and actually believed.
Okay, let's shift to the third imperative. Magnify people's strengths. This sounds like a fundamental change in mindset.
It really is. Moving away from just thinking, how much value can we squeeze out of this employee? Right.
And towards thinking, how can we actively build value in this employee? The research argues that's the real meaning of improving productivity. Think about your own work. When do you feel most productive? Probably when using your strengths, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it makes sense in today's job market trying to keep good people, but it's more than just retention, isn't it? There's a longer game.
Absolutely. Companies worry about training costs. What if they leave after we've invested in them?
Sure, that's a common fear.
But the research points to elite places, top universities, hospitals, big names like Goldman Sachs, McKinsey, tech giants like Google, Apple. They've always known the value of investing heavily in their people.
How do they do that?
Through building networks, encouraging creative interaction, giving people stretching assignments, serious training, and even just the brand association itself adds value to the employee.
And it's not just those elite high-skill places, is it? McDonald's UK came up as a surprising example. It really did. McDonald's UK invests, believe it or not, £36 million a year, helping their employees get actual academic qualifications while working.
$36 million on frontline staff.
Yeah. They're one of the UK's biggest apprenticeship providers now. They've given out tens of thousands of qualifications in basic math and English, plus specific programs for managers on coaching and communication.
That's impressive. And the payoff isn't just better burgers, presumably.
The key metric they track for this investment isn't revenue, it's lower turnover for both crew members and managers. It keeps people there.
That's a really strong example from an unexpected place. What about the games makers for the London Olympics?
Yeah.
That sounded like unlocking potential on a huge scale.
The Games Makers program was incredible, training that massive volunteer workforce for the Olympics.
Yeah, I remember them.
What was really smart was how they deliberately engaged people with little or no work experience. They had a Trailblazer program teaching paid staff how to work well with diverse volunteers. And a personal best program giving skills and qualifications to thousands who'd been long-term unemployed. Even a program for recent school leavers.
So really reaching out.
Totally. And its success actually made government agencies and other companies rethink how they engage talent, looking at a much wider pool of people.
It shows what's possible. But this strategy isn't risk-free, is it? The research mentioned Greg Smith leaving Goldman Sachs.
That's a really crucial point. When you publicly commit to developing your people, you build up a lot of reputational goodwill.
Right? You look good.
But that goodwill is fragile. If you fail to live up to those promises, the damage can be immense. Greg Smith's very public resignation letter accusing Goldman of losing its values.
Yeah, that was huge news.
It was so damaging precisely because Goldman had built this reputation of valuing its people. Once you start down this road, you really have to stick with it.
Okay, moving to the fourth imperative. This feels really central. Stand for more than shareholder value. That basic human need to be part of something bigger.
Exactly. People want to feel their work matters, that it contributes to something they can genuinely believe in. It's about linking personal values with the organization's values to create shared meaning.
And the research argues this isn't just for, say, charities or environmental groups. Any company can do this.
That's the point. It's not limited to inherently worthy industries. The research shared some really powerful personal stories.
Like which ones?
Like the academic who felt this deep connection to Novo Nordisk because their insulin pens literally saved his life every day.
Wow, that's personal.
Or the BMW engineers who are so obsessed with car safety they wake up at 4 a.m. with ideas. That's passion driven by purpose.
Right. Not just a job.
And then that story about Michael Berry at New York Life, the insurance guy.
Yeah, the former teacher.
Yeah.
How did he find meaning in insurance sales?
He found a company, New York Life, that was deeply, fundamentally committed to the core idea of life insurance and paying claims ethically. Even when others were diversifying, they doubled down. Barry told the story about someone who took out a policy, died the same night, before the first payment even went through.
Oh, wow. So technically unpaid.
Technically. But New York Life paid the claim in full. Barry said it was stories like that which motivated the agents. It showed the company's character.
And New York Life is a mutual company, owned by policyholders. But the CEO argues this applies to public companies too.
Yes, Ted Mathis. He admits their structure helps, but he argues many public companies have just lost sight of their basic purpose. They don't know who they are anymore.
So his point is?
That profit should be the result of pursuing a meaningful goal, not the goal itself. If you focus on the mission, the financial success should follow.
That leads really smoothly into the fifth one. Show how the daily work makes sense. So it's not just the big picture mission, but the actual tasks.
Exactly. You have to look closely at individual jobs. Do the task make sense? Is the work structured logically? Can we make the daily grind itself more engaging, more meaningful? It's a big job.
John Lewis reviewing all their jobs, that sounds like a massive task.
It was huge. John Lewis Partnership, which includes Waitrose and the department stores, reviewed over 2,200 different jobs.
2,200.
And put them into a 10-level structure. Now, that might sound like bureaucracy, but for them, being employee-owned, it was actually about trying to match their partners better with work they'd find genuinely fulfilling.
Aligning people and roles better.
Yeah.
Okay. And Rabobank Nederland, their Rabo Unplugged, sounds pretty radical.
Rabo Unplugged is really pushing the boundaries. They built the tech infrastructure so people can work securely from almost anywhere.
Total flexibility.
Pretty much. No fixed offices, no rigid job descriptions. Employees get a lot of freedom to decide how, where, when, and even with whom they work.
That must require enormous trust.
Absolutely. Huge trust in your team. And it demands that employees think more like entrepreneurs, taking initiative and collaborating proactively.
Arup came up again here with their extreme seamless working style.
Yeah, Tristram Carfrey from Arup described how architects, engineers, cost consultants, project managers, they all physically work together in the same space.
All mixed in.
Yep. And the key is deliberately trying to minimize individual egos for the good of the project. It's super interdependent.
Sounds potentially tricky.
Carfrey admitted it. Incredible rewards when it worked well and incredible frustrations when it didn't. But the idea is everyone pulls together, valuing each contribution.
But investing all this in making work meaningful, it doesn't guarantee people stay, does it? The research mentioned Will Wright leaving EA.
That's a fair point. Even in the best environments, super talented people might leave for a project they're incredibly passionate about, like Will Wright did.
So it's still a risk.
It is. But the research argues the risk of not investing in meaningful work is far greater. You risk losing your best people to competitors who do make that investment.
Right, the risk of inaction. Okay, finally, the sixth imperative. Have rules people can believe in. This isn't no rules, is it?
Not at all. The organization of your dreams isn't anarchy. You absolutely need rules and structure. Think about those Arup engineers. They have to follow safety rules meticulously.
Of course. Lives depend on it.
The point is eliminating the arbitrary rules, the stupid ones, the ones that get in the way, don't make sense, and just frustrate people without adding value.
So how do you get necessary systems without just creating more red tape?
The key seems to be making sure people understand why the rules exist and see them as legitimate and fair.
Okay. Transparency again?
Yeah. Look at Vestergaard Franson, the social enterprise making mosquito nets. They have simple, clear rules for hiring and firing. They give regional bosses lots of autonomy, but within clear targets. Their communication rules encourage directness.
So the rules support the mission.
Exactly. They see them as protecting their values and purpose, not hindering them. They aren't seen as bureaucracy because their purpose is clear.
And there's a shift in what kind of authority works now. Less top-down.
Definitely. People are more skeptical of authority just based on a job title or position on the org chart.
Right.
What they respond to more is moral authority, leadership that earns respect because the organization's purpose is seen as important and making a real difference.
Like that Ernst & Young example.
Yeah, Steve Varley at EY UK. After they posted record profits, he asked his senior partners, "Is that all there is?"
Wow. Bold question.
It led them to refocus not just on profit, but on driving social change, too. It shifted their sense of purpose.
The research ended with that really sharp contrast in how people talk about their work.
Right. Imagine someone saying, I'll be home late, working on a cure for migraine, or busy planning how to get insulin into East Africa.
Yeah, that sounds important.
Versus, I'll be home late, I'm increasing shareholder value. It just doesn't have the same ring, does it?
Not quite the same motivational pull, no. It really highlights that difference between purpose-driven work and just work.
Precisely.
So pulling all this together, if you had to boil down the main message from this deep dive, what would it be?
I think fundamentally it's that people genuinely want to do good work. They want to be in an organization that makes a real difference and one that helps them use and grow their own strengths.
And getting there requires?
It requires this careful balancing act. Autonomy and structure, coherence, real honesty, and openness throughout the organization. It's not easy.
And it was interesting how many of the companies held up as examples aren't typical large corporations structure-wise. Partnerships, mutuals, social enterprises.
That's a really interesting observation. Many of them, while needing to be financially sound, aren't primarily driven only by maximizing profit in the traditional shareholder sense.
But they do have things in common.
Definitely. They all seem incredibly clear about what they are truly good at, their core strengths. And they share a healthy skepticism. They don't just jump on every new management fad that comes along.
So for you, our listener, as you think about all this, what really stands out? Which of these 6 imperatives clicks most with your own experiences or what you want from a workplace?
Yeah, it really makes you think about the power these ideas have to change how we experience work.
And the big challenge, maybe, is figuring out how to make these dream organizations the standard, not just the exceptions we talk about.
That's a powerful thought to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.